Welcome to the next podcast for Another Chance Church. Joining me today is Pastor Alan Stoddard of, I'm going to have to edit this because I just...
Calvary Chapel Ruidoso, bro.
Calvary Chapel Ruidoso.
We do one of these every week, and we do the same thing every week. We're like, what did we say?
Anyway, so I asked Pastor Alan if he would come and do a podcast, and I gave him the choice of what he wanted to cover, and he wants to talk about disciple making. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off and see what you got for me.
All right, Jared. And just kick in at any point. Just shift it, add to it, kill it. It's all good. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Man, I was talking about you the other day to Justin Bowman out at Trinity Church in Capitan, and was just talking to him about our partnering and what's going on. And now, with COVID-19, a lot of things have slowed down or changed. It sped up in some ways for us pastors. You know that. So thanks for having me on. We appreciate it. We value your vision for your church. I was looking on your Facebook page, and others reject. That's a good thing, man. We want to create churches where everybody belongs, and we want to have that culture that allows for that kind of thing. Nothing against other churches. I've been in almost every kind of church, man. I've been in a traditional church, traditional Southern Baptist church. I've been in a mega black church. I've been in smaller black churches. I've been in Latino churches. Wasn't on staff at that, but I was close enough to understand some of the culture. And now I'm at a Calvary church. So we understand that different church cultures, and we want to keep the environment that you're trying to unfold out of your heart. Another Chance Church, people others reject. No perfect people allowed kind of thing. That's just awesome. And so we value that so much. Well, one of the things that I've learned throughout all these years, I've been in the ministry 34 years coming up on. And I was a guy that got saved when I was 24, got set up on a blind date. And next thing you know, party boy becomes church boy. And it was pretty wild. Went to school and got some educated, and then you start learning. Somebody said, get all the education you can and then trash all that you can. So anyway, you learn how to learn. And so now we're here at Calvary, and what we figured out, especially with men, is that there is a disciple-making dearth. There's a very emptiness to disciple making. I've been doing Devos online since COVID-19, and that's been 4 weeks now. Has it been 4 weeks? Man, it's coming up on it if not. And I wanted to give back, but really what it did is it rekindled my own personal devotional life. That's what it did. I was really sloppy.
Funny how stuff like that happens.
Yeah, if I tell the truth, I had just gotten way comfortable. It wasn't good. It was okay, but God's used this to rekindle where I need to be. Here's the thing. Most of the people that log on to that are women. Now, there's brothers in there, and they're listening. But one of the concerns I have is that men are not where they want to be, where God may want them to be. And then the question becomes, have we equipped men to lead their homes during a COVID-19 situation? Man, I just, and what does that look like? Anyway, we've learned that only 1 in 10 people, after they're saved and baptized, Pastor Jared, only 1 in 10 will raise their hand and say, I received disciple making, 1-on-1 or 1-on-3, Peter, James, and John. Only 1 in 10 will raise their hand and say, I got it. Only 1 in 10, man. Now, let's say we've been in and we've done some surveys and it's been, so let's say 5 or 6 in 10. That's still not great. It's just not great. And then when we back it in to the local church, what happens is our strategy for one-on-one, 1-on-3, 1-on-12 disciple making is a real, it's really weak. So what we've done in the past 5 years is we have been disciple making guys that are among the willing, and we get them in to attempt to disciple them in 4 basic fundamentals. Then we tell them right up front, what the disciple making we're about to do to you one-on-one is not for you. And they kind of look at you like, what? And then we say, no, it's not for you. You're going to get it, but this is for somebody else through you. It's a reproducing disciple making strategy. It's really not a model. We're really hesitant to call it a model, and we definitely won't call it a program.
Yeah.
Is because we want it to be organic. And what we do is we look for men, and this is, we disciple women too, but we've really focused, being a guy, we focus on the guys. We look for men who are faithful, reliable, available, and teachable. F-R-A-T, frat. Men who are faithful men. Men who are available. Are they available? Reliable. Can these men in a basic way be reliable? That kind of goes with available maybe, and then it leads into teachable. Are you a teachable person? Because not everybody is all that. And sometimes we've taken men and we will disciple them toward all of that. And really, we all are discipling toward faithful, available, teachable, reliable. We're just trying to have a framework that is not legalistic, but is measurable. And so what we do is we take those kind of guys and we do these 4 things with them. We teach them one-on-one how to have confidence in your relationship with God. That's the doctrine of assurance, but we call it confidence because we think your average guy, he's not going to read a book and he's not going to do a bunch of homework. But if we ask him to bring a piece of paper and a Bible, what we do is we teach him through the use of imagery. We use 3 circles. And what happens is we teach these guys, it takes me about 4 months to walk a guy through this stuff. I tell them, you're going to do it enough to where you're sick of it. You're going to be sick and tired of it. And when you're sick and tired of it, you might be ready for a break. But what we do is we have repetition in it.
Yeah.
So confidence in your relationship with God, we find out if a man is saved, and then we have a way it unfolds in these circles on a piece of paper. And what happens is over and over again, they get the general picture and it sticks in their mind. And it Velcros on the heart some. And it's not just about the content. When we think we've taken Robert Coleman's book, Master Plan of Evangelism, and condensed it into 3 things: relationship, intentional content, and reproducible. Is it relational, intentional, and reproducible? When I talk to pastors about this, if I ask them, they'll say, yeah, relationships, man, that's good. We all got that. No problem. Mm-hmm. Intentional. They might have an intentional content. It doesn't have to be the content that we would say, but there'll be an intentional content. But when we say, is your stuff reproducible? The conversation's usually over. Because what we do is we want to get a guy to read some book that guys like me and you read. Well, we're going to read that book, but the average dude, he's just not that passionate for that. He's not a reader, period. And then we're saying, read this and show up and we'll talk about it. Instead, we've said, no, bring your Bible and we're going to show you some key verses. And so we show them how to have confidence in the relationship with God. After we're done with that, guys, have confidence. A lot of people are doubting their salvation. Yeah. The reason why is because only 1 in 10 were discipled when they first got saved and baptized in the younger part of their story with Christ. Only 1 in 10. And so we teach how to have confidence in your relationship with God. And then on the last 3 lessons, which are these: experiencing the love and forgiveness of God, being filled with the Spirit, and walking with the Spirit. Those 3, we insert a third circle. So you got 1 circle, 2 circle, 3 circle. Natural man, spiritual man, and worldly man. Now, at this point, you may recognize my lingo, full disclosure. This stuff comes, all of it, all the content that I've stated, or even now on the podcast, it comes from Campus Crusade for Christ. I ran into a guy named John Burton, and John used to work for Bill Bright. And Bill Bright, for those listeners who don't know who he is, he used to be a contemporary with Billy Graham. And if you were to look up the Jesus movement, you would see Billy Graham and Bill Bright, and Campus Crusade for Christ was this movement of college students that, I mean, they, back in the Jesus movement of the late 60s, early 70s, it took off like wildfire. These young people were going to campuses, leading people to Christ, and then they would disciple them. So when we get to the third circle, we call it natural man, spiritual man, and then the worldly man. What happens is when we do that third circle, what that's all about, to make it real simplistic for the podcast, is it's teaching new believers, younger believers, and even any older believers that are willing to get in. We want to just work it through so they have tools. The third circle is usually the kicker, man, because that's where we teach them, okay, what do you do with your sinful nature now that you've been saved? A lot of people get saved. They think they're supposed to have all this life change up front, but not everybody can break from their stuff as easily as some stuff. When I got saved, I drank a lot. I drank like a fish. I was just a binge partier. Well, what happened was when I got saved, God took that away within about right away, really. Now, I drank a couple of times a beer or two after I got saved in the spring of '88. But I realized for many reasons it wasn't going to work for me. Mm-hmm. But God came in and he just wiped it out of my desire. Now, sexual immorality, he took that away. Now, did I still struggle? Yes. But no. So now, did I still cuss? Yeah, it took me a whole year to stop cussing. And every once in a while, I still can get off track, say things I shouldn't say. I'm not like Mark Driscoll or something, the cussing pastor or anything. But I'm saying I still struggle. That's the sinful nature. Sure. Why do we get angry? Why do I get angry at my wife? Why can't I get control of my inner self? And we teach people that's because you still have a sinful nature, man. It doesn't go away when you get saved. Yeah. It's paid for, and you have access to the Spirit in a way that gives you victory over it, but it's not gone. And you and I as pastors know that. So if you and I as pastors know that, well, my gosh, the people, the sheep, they're definitely going to have the same problem. So we teach men how to negotiate the sinful nature. And what happens is they close the gap in their sin life. It's amazing what happens. We don't become sinless. We never teach them that. But we tell men you can actually walk in victory over these things instead of letting them have all this time and like you feel defeated, so you never really overcome. And what we tell guys is confess it. Keep short accounts with God. And we unfold this for three times: experiencing the love and forgiveness of God, confess your sins. When you sin, don't stockpile it. Get it right. So one of the stories I tell, a funny story about third circle and coming back to get it out of the content for a minute, just to make story out of it, is one night when I was over at First Baptist, my wife and I were very busy. It was just ministry. And we pulled up to the church for an open mic night. And in that open mic night, we before we pulled up, my wife wanted to talk about getting a new car. Now, I didn't want to talk about getting a new car. I hate car payments.
No.
I hate them. I don't want it. But she was like, well, we got to do it. And so anyway, I kind of went off on her. I didn't, I got verbally loud. I was rude, and it just wasn't good. It was okay, but it wasn't okay. I don't want anybody to think I manhandled my wife or nothing. I didn't do that. She would brain me with a frying pan. So, but I went off on her, and then we get out of the car and we go up to the church, and everybody's like, "Oh, hey, Alan, hey, Pastor, how you doing, man?" And I'm like, "Oh, we're doing great, guys. How you doing, Mr. and Mrs. Spiritual here? We're here." We get through the night. We go home. We go to bed, and when we go to bed, we're not mad really, but we're definitely unsettled.
Yeah.
We go to bed. I wake up in the morning, and I don't know if you're a cat person, but for those of you that are cat people out there that'll watch this, if you have a cat, cats can, if you're asleep, they'll lay right on your chest. And when you wake up, if you're not careful, you're sleeping heavy, the cat will just be there and start purring. And then when you wake up, that cat will be right there. It'll be right in your face. When I woke up, it was as if God himself was right in my face. He was like, "Good morning, Alan." I'm like, oh my. I mean, I was wide awake right away.
Yeah.
There wasn't any wake up period. No coffee. No, no. I was awake. And I was like, "Good morning, God." Whoa. Immediate conviction hit me when I woke up. Immediate. And I was, and the Lord was like, "You left your wife in jail all night." I was like, "What?" "Yeah, you could have fixed it last night, but no, you came home and went to bed." And I was like, "Lord, we don't need no car payments." I tried to tell her I didn't want to talk about it, God. And Lord, it wasn't all my fault. And the Lord was like, "Shush, stop talking, Alan. I'm not listening to you until you get this right. This was your fault." And then I was like, "You're right. You're right. I surrender." 1 John 1:9, confess it to God. "God, I'm busted. You're right. I got to get this right." And I went over to my wife. We're both kind of talking it out. We're crying. I said, "I'm so sorry. I should have not." And here's the thing. If a woman wants a car, she's going to get the car. So what is my problem? We needed a new car anyway. Well, what was the problem? The problem was I was all ate up inside with other things. And as a pastor, I came home and I vomited that all over my wife in that little episode. Not catastrophic, but when I confessed my sin and I said, "God, I'm sorry. I'm busted. I want to get this right. I do not live for anger. I live for righteousness. I want to pursue your heart." And when I confessed it, he's faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Now, I tell that story to say, and we tell men, we say, look, when you confess your sins, you're walking by faith in the Lord instead of guilt and unforgiveness in your life. And it's amazing what happens. We call it first circle, second circle, third circle. What happens is guys and gals, even women that have not gone through it, but their husbands go through this disciple making stuff. What happens is the women will start saying, "Yeah, my husband was in the third circle last night." Or the wife will say, "Yeah, I went third circle on my husband." Or "I went third circle." The little spiritual joke is third circle. We've got a sinful nature. We all have it. We know we've got it, and we don't want to be defeated by it. And what we do is we teach people how to walk with the Lord that shortens the accounts and keeps them walking by faith. So that's a lot to say about disciple making, but what we learned was Navigators, Campus Crusade for Christ. I'm missing somebody. Navigators, Campus Crusade for Christ. And there's one more that I'm forgetting, but these college ministries, Christian Challenge, if you want to know what's happening with disciple making, don't look to the older guys. I don't mean anything, any slights on guys like me. I'm older. But don't look to us. You need to look to the young people, because they're the ones that are going to college campuses, and they're the ones that are on fire and on edge to reach people who are unchurched, like your church is talking about, Another Chance Church. Those people are not going to be able to be thrown into our Sunday school classes. They're not going to be able to, unless you have a healthy small group system, they're not going to be able to go in and be discipled in a group that they perceive. These are people that think they have no problems, or they don't perceive that they have problems. Now, they do have problems, but those people usually won't admit it, and it's just not their focus. No problem, but you got to. That's why I'm excited about your church. In part, one of the reasons is that you've got a chance to create a disciple-making model that's not stuck to any program. All right, now what are you sitting there thinking while I'm saying all this, man? I just kind of waxed over for 20 good minutes, man.
Oh, that's all right, man. Well, first of all, I kind of grew up feeling the same way. Most of where I spent my time was traditional churches, and there wasn't much that stood out to me beyond, ask Jesus in your heart, and then awesome, come to church and let's have sermons. And the whole one-on-one thing. Now, granted, I never sought it out either, but
right,
one-on-one, nobody ever came to me and said, now that you have done this thing, and of course I played church till I was 35, so I was never really serious about it anyway. But I never saw anybody try to reach out and say, look, here's what the deal is. You did this today, and that's awesome. But tomorrow, life's still going to be there, and you've got to be able to deal with that. And I mean, I think that's one of the first steps that needs to be taken with anybody is you're not perfect. You're on the right path now, but you got to understand that, you're going to fall. Don't let that stop you. Just like you said, don't, keep short accounts. And when you do stumble, don't just give up because you think, well, it must not have been real. So the whole idea of teaching people, and I always heard, go tell other people and spread the good news and spread the gospel. But what I never heard was how. Let me teach you and show you what that looks like. And I mean, it's still a personal thing, but you got to have a jumping off point. You got to have somebody lead you to somewhere and say, now this is where you start. This is where you start making it your own. But disciple making, even in the Bible, disciples were students, but they weren't just students. Oftentimes you'd see them grow and be student teachers as well. So they kind of played both sides as they learned. And that's something else that people need as they're being discipled, is they need to be, led out and said, okay, now stuff, now start sharing it, start passing it on. Like you said, when you're tired of it, then maybe you're ready for a break, but maybe you're ready to start passing it on to somebody else. And I think that's where a lot of Christian complacency comes in, because they get the whole, okay, I'm saved and I'm part of the family now, and I'm going to go to church and just hear a message because I don't know what to do next.
Yeah, the reproducible part is crucial. Most churches don't have it. Only the evangelistic people or the leaders will try to reproduce. And what reproduction, even if you lowball reproduction into I serve, I give back, and those are great things, man. That is reproduction. Jesus comes in, he changes, we do all those things. But we need to have a model that says, I reproduce into other people. Not just reproduce into strategy and programs, because it's like any, I was a Baptist guy for 26 years, so I always like to ask my Baptist guys, when's the last time your Sunday school reproduced a new group? And if the Sunday school hadn't reproduced a new group in a year, Harry Pilon, the great Harry Pilon, said that you forfeited your Great Commission rights. If it doesn't reproduce into something new. So we've got to focus on that. I would encourage all pastors and people to think about one-on-one disciple making. I've been watching last couple nights the series called The Chosen. You ever seen that?
I have not watched any of it, but I've seen it around.
Dude, I was sitting there weeping last night. It is got some amazing parts to it. They show some setup of the lives of the 12 that's just, it's stunning. Jesus chose these. They show the unlikeliness of the 12 to be chosen. It's just amazing, and how he did it. He chose them, and in rabbinic culture, when you were in your teen years, you would start to decide if you were going to be discipled by a rabbi. These guys probably were not those guys. Jesus chose a whole different category of people to disciple. He did not choose the religious overall.
Yeah.
He chose, so I highly recommend watching that for disciple-making strategy, just to see how they unfolded the context of Jesus choosing those 12. And what we do is we look for people who are faithful, reliable, available, and teachable. Or John Burton calls it faithful, available, and teachable. We throw in reliable just to do it. They're all the same thing. But John Burton is a guy that got this from Bill Bright. Bill Bright gave it to John. John invested it in me because we started having so many newer, younger believers at one point. We were like, how are we going to disciple these people? And we didn't want to just throw them into big groups of 12 to 20 to 30 people and call that small group. That's good. I'm not against that. I think that's a good thing. However, it's much better when you can get a Peter, James, and John situation going one-on-one, one-on-three, so that you can pay attention to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's up to us to follow the Savior's model. The Savior, he handpicked the 12. He handpicked them. And I think we would do well to start doing it. I'll tell you where it all started for us. Do we need to stop?
No.
So where it started for us is there's a guy named Tim Ebert. I don't know if you've met Tim yet, but you need to meet Tim. Every church needs a Tim Ebert. Tim is the guy that came from Casper, Wyoming. He was a meth head, party animal. He and I have become like blood brothers. Well, when he first came down here to Ruidoso, a friend of mine named Tony Goodmanson was his friend in Casper. And Tim comes down. Well, Tony's family's coming to church. Tim comes to church. Tim goes on a mission trip. He gets saved on that mission trip out here in New Mexico, the Navajo reservation. And he goes out there and he gets saved. He gets baptized. He comes back. He's fire, man. And then the Lord over at the church one day said, are you just going to stand there and look at that guy, or are you ever going to disciple him? I was like, okay, you're right, Lord. I'm just standing here doing nothing, enjoying being the pastor. So I got with him every Thursday at 7 a.m., and then a couple other guys attached to it, Jeremy Wood and Jonathan Allen. And those were the first three guys that we worked through this process. And it took us a year because I had to keep up with all three of those guys. We would all travel at different times, so we couldn't all meet every single week. For most weeks we did. It probably took us 6 to 8 months to go through confidence in your relationship with God, experiencing the love and forgiveness of God, being filled with the Spirit, walking in the Spirit. It took us about 6 to 8 months, probably 8 months. And we took a month off here or there because of travel, like I said, but that's where it started. And now Tim is able to give this away. He's worked a few men through what we call the circles. And here is a newer, younger believer who right away was taught how to give his own faith away, not just sharing the gospel with evangelism, but also able to disciple other people within the first year or two of his salvation experience. Now, could you imagine if our churches were filled with that kind of stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
It's game-changing.
And I think you hit on something a while ago. There's absolutely an importance to serving in the church and to being there to help reinforce each other. But that's half of the job that anyone sitting in a pew should be doing, and the other half is to reach out to those outside. And I've heard so many times that people complain that the church isn't growing because the pastor's not bringing people in. And what I try to gently and lovingly remind people is shepherds don't make sheep. Sheep make sheep. Shepherds feed them. And that's where, but again, a lot of the people don't do it because they're frightened of it. They don't know what they're doing, and they don't have a model to follow. And so they're like, well, I'd love to do it, but I get face to face with somebody and I don't know what I'm doing. And people are afraid they don't know enough.
No, and the way that we do it is very intentional. I'm pretty freakish on how I disciple a new believer. And all that I've said, none of it's my material. Nothing. I mean, okay, so this is crusade follow-up. That's all this is. If someone went to a crusade, like a couple years ago, I took Tim Ebert, who I just mentioned, to Greg Laurie's crusade in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And we signed up to be decision counselors. And I mean, Tim, that boy was on fire. It was awesome. Well, if the crusade were to say, hey, we're going to give you guys, we're gonna deal with you guys and give you opportunity to be followed up on by a local church. And in that local church, they're going to call you. And what would be the content? They would give the content that I just gave. Assurance. Are you sure of the decision that you just made? Confidence in your relationship with God. The next one, they're going to teach them how to walk by faith while they have a sinful nature, because the newer, younger believer probably hasn't been they've been theologically and doctrinally and scripturally, spiritually delivered, but in the flesh, they still have a war going on, Paul said. Yeah. The good that I want to do, I don't do. The evil that I don't want to do. Paul didn't say bad. He said the evil that I don't want to do. I find myself doing that. I practice it. That was the Apostle Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So the crusade happens, and we're going to teach you. Well, what happens? Well, the guy goes home. Well, Tim could have followed up on the people he led to the Lord. First of all, he was equipped to do it, all of it. However, what happens in your average crusade? The people go home, and the church calls them. And let's say the person doesn't pick up. They're either not home, or if there's a landline, or they don't answer the phone and let it go to voicemail. And then they call the church back at night. They check their voicemail and go, okay, I'm going to call back at night. Well, nobody's at the church at night because all the staff went home at night. And so the staff comes back. They go through their whole list. They make a few more phone calls in the next week, maybe two, maybe. And what happens? The people call back again. After 2 phone calls, it's over. They fall through the cracks, and the disciple making never happens. That's where it's got to be someone in addition to the pastor. Now, I do think that pastors need to lead the way on this. I realized, and I already knew this with evangelism, if the pastor's not modeling evangelism, most of the time, it's not going to be a good scenario for evangelism. There is no gift of evangelism. There's a gift of evangelist, but that evangelist is the equipper. And many pastors have the gift of evangelism. They just don't know it. Mm-hmm. They've got to do evangelism training, real equipping. So the same thing with disciple making. The pastor has to learn how to follow up on new believers. I'll be honest with you, Jared. I went for many, many years. I could tell you theoretically how to disciple new believers. No problem. But if you were to look at my calendar and ask, show me the new believers and younger believers, because there's some in that category, and the newer, younger believers that you're discipling, you wouldn't have found them on my calendar. It wasn't until I changed my calendar to have a desire for disciple making that things started to change in my life and in the ministry that God's given me. It's crucial. It is a shift in thinking back to the New Testament. Being able to disciple people with an open Bible and a piece of paper or a napkin in a way that, and after a while, what happens is people are going, wow. For me, people were like, wow, Alan's giving me time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I take them, I buy them a latte, and I try to take them to Starbucks, and I buy them a drink, and if they'll give me an hour a week for 4 to 6 months, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to just enjoy the whole time. Plus, we bond together, and then that person, I would say, probably about a third of the people that we've discipled are giving it away in some kind of way. So that's not the number we want, but it's better than what we had.
Yeah, it's a result at least.
Yeah.
Another thing you said that you do it, at Starbucks or whatever in public. I like that because not only are you now building that relationship with that person, but you're doing it publicly, and other people are seeing it. Whether you realize the result of that or not, other people are seeing it, and there's going to be seeds planted unintentionally.
We used to do this. I did this a couple times. I broke the rule, and I actually discipled 6 people at a time. And we used to go down to the big table at Starbucks, and people would hear us talking. And we weren't overly loud, but we were loud enough to where people would look over and go, "What's going on over there?" And every once in a while, people would see us there every week. And every once in a while, they would go, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" And we'd be able to share the gospel with them. Some people, we'd be able to set them up for a future disciple-making equipping time. And we've just become passionate. Now, our passion wanes sometimes by season, but we've decided we want to have people in the church that are capable of discipling one-on-one. And that one-on-one, by the way, it can involve more than what I'm saying here on your podcast today. It could be working somebody through a Bible book. Mm-hmm. It could be one of the things that I'm doing at the leadership level right now for disciple making is I'm teaching a bunch of bikers how to use Haddon Robinson's method of preaching from his book, Biblical Preaching. I mean, these are the bikers that are getting this stuff. These are people that have not been to Bible college and seminary. I've got about 6 to 8 of them who are letting me just pour into them what we call hermeneutics and homiletics. I mean, I'm just showing them how to preach and teach the Bible. It's amazing what's going on there. So that's another thing. It doesn't have to be the content we're saying. So there could be all kinds of new believer content that you use. But here's the problem. We pastors want to go buy some new book, or I'm not against that. I sound like I'm anti. I'm not. But when people have to have a bunch of homework, for some reason, they just don't do it, especially men.
Yeah.
The ladies will probably do it, actually. But the men, they're just not going to do it like that.
I also agree.
There's more to this, too. There's follow-up. I text the people that I disciple. I text them a couple times a week, check on them, tell them if they need anything. I'm your go-to person. During COVID-19, there's a guy that I didn't get to finish discipling yet that we just took a pause, but I texted him earlier today and just checked on him. So there's follow-up involved. It's not just, okay, give me your life so I can give you my content. It's we're going to do this thing side by side, and we're going to become bros, and I wanted to show you some stuff. This is the beginning end.
And that's a big difference between the whole here's a book, study it, and what you're talking about as well. And I agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing personal study and learning new stuff and things like that. But there is a very stark difference between handing somebody a book and telling them, come back and we'll discuss what you talked about, and actually walking through it with them. And then in that side, you're also starting to build you're strengthening those relationships, because let's face it, the people of the church should be leaning on the people of the church. And that's not what is happening in the majority of areas today, because I spend way more time with the people I work with than the people I church with. And, and so that's where we tend to lean and want to take our problems and seek counsel and stuff like that, because those are the people we know the best. Whereas the people in church, I see them a couple times a week, and I'm pretty sure they're friendly people because we shake hands, but that's it. I don't have a relationship with them, and that needs to change.
Right on. So your disciple-making model up front will be not just you, but especially you, since you're a new church. The foundation you lay in the beginning will drive the next 10 years probably. And if I could do it all over again, I would make one-on-one, one-on-three disciple making an absolute mandatory thing. My leaders would absolutely have to do it. It's hard to get people in when they're already entrenched in the church, and that's fine. Nobody works against it, so it's fine. But I think the more you get it out with people, the more it's going to spread. And that expectation of, hey, can you meet me at Starbucks once a week? And then we all said, hey, if you're a new believer, meet with one of our guys. If we want to disciple you one-on-one, that'll scare some people. They'll go, what? But if you sell it right and you just talk it right and it's natural and it's not really a sales pitch, and you just say, hey, the ones that naturally happen are the ones that are best. And so people will start looking around. They'll be like, hey, there's a new person. And you don't get with them, and you don't get with a brand new person and start off with the content.
Yeah.
You get with them and you just relate to them. Hey, who are you? Who are you? What's your name? What's your life story, as much as you want to share? And where are you on your journey with God? I tell my part of that. And next thing you know, you're connecting. And then for people that really want to be at the leadership level, we show them how to reproduce content. Because when you use those circles, what happens is you don't forget them. That imagery sticks to your mind. And after 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, depending on how long it goes, because there's times when you show up and you're not doing content, the person may have an issue, or you may have an issue that you just need to vent, and you're just hanging out. But 1 hour a week, I'm committed to this time. That's my disciple making hour. And for most people, that's where they say, man, I'm meeting with Alan. Okay, pastor. They let me invest in them, and it's just been game changing. And there are churches that make disciples one-on-one, and there are the churches that are doing, I think you do less. And I'm a small groups guy. I'm a sermon-based small groups guy. So I'm not against smaller groups that are 12. I'm not against that. I sound like I am. I'm not against it. I'm saying there's a group of people, though, that you got to get them one-on-one. If you don't get the newer, younger believers early, they're going to be the 9 that say, no, I never got discipled one-on-one. 20 years later, they'll be going, nope, nobody ever discipled me. It's terrible.
Awesome.
And we've decided to fight back on it.
Awesome.
Right on.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you, brother.
And this has been a lot of good information for me. I'm kind of thinking maybe I want to try to get involved in one of your cycles at some point.
That would be cool. And let me say that we make ourselves available. John Burton lives in Alamogordo, and we've got guys that will help. I'll get you plugged in. It really is something for guys that just works. It lays a foundation, but we are willing to help any church, any leaders that want to learn more about how to do one-on-one. There is no money involved. We don't say, hey, you got to pay us. We don't do any of that. We will help anybody just launch off and help, because that's how we got it.
Yeah, cool.
So thank you.
All right, and you guys watching, if you got any questions, comments, direct them to me. If you want to get connected with Pastor Alan, let me know, and I'll get in touch with them. We'll get you guys connected up, and be blessed, and we'll be back again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, bro.
Have a good one.